Hello everyone, my name is Masha, and today I want to teach you how to make this beautiful bracelet. This video is sponsored by Skillshare. More about them at the end of the video. Looking at this bracelet, you might think that it's a bit complex, but in reality it's only 4 steps. And the steps are pretty simple. I wouldn't necessarily call this a beginner bracelet because if you're just starting out this might be a little bit difficult. I would recommend starting with my beginner's guide video, which is an overview on bracelets in general, and then starting with a chevron bracelet for your first bracelet to try. I'll leave both of those videos linked in the description for you, along with the video on basic knots, since in this tutorial I'm going to assume that you already know how to do them. But as I said, there are just 4 steps to this bracelet and they are all pretty simple. They all go in the shape of a chevron with some minor differences, so let's get into that. So for this pattern, you're going to need 4 colors. One of those colors is going to be the background color, in my case that is black, and then the 3 other colors are going to be the colors that you want to show up within the bracelet. I went with similar colors as to the pattern, red, yellow, and green. Feel free to choose whatever colors you prefer. So for the colored strings, you need 2 strings per color, or 1 string per color if you are making a loop, since that doubles the amount of strings that you have. And for the background color, you're going to need 8 strings per color, or 4 if you are doing a loop. All of these strings are about 1 meter long, but 2 if you are doing a loop like me, since you need to double the length of strings for the loop. So as you can see, I went with a teardrop loop for my bracelet. The start at the beginning is just a basic loop, and then when I bring out all of the colors, that's what makes it a teardrop loop. I have a separate tutorial for how to make a teardrop loop, which will be linked in the card and in the description for you to watch to save time in this video. All you need to know for how to make a teardrop loop for this bracelet is the string order, which I will give you in just a second. But also, you don't have to start your bracelet with a teardrop loop. This is just what I want to start with. I have a whole playlist filled with different beginnings and ends that you can create for bracelets, so you can pick one that you like and then just continue making the bracelet with me. You can even just do a normal loop without the teardrop part. I just think that the teardrop bit makes it a little bit more neat when it all comes together. So in terms of the color order, these are both mirrored. The first string that you bring out, either in a teardrop loop or in whatever start you do, will be the black string. Then your first color string that you want to show up in the bracelet. Then another black string or background string if you're doing a different color. Then it's not the second color. We're not going from red to yellow in this bracelet. We're going from red to green to yellow. So this is actually the 3rd color that you want to show up in your bracelet. So be careful if you want to go for a specific order. Make sure that the second string that you bring out, the second color string, is actually the 3rd one that you want to show up in the bracelet. So that will be the 3rd color string, then another string of the background on both sides, and then the 2nd color string, which is the green. And then of course you're left with the 2 background strings. So we're basically just alternating the background color with the colored strings. But once again, the first colored string closest to the edges is going to be the first one that you're going to use. Then the next colored string is going to be the last one you're going to use. And then the last colored string is going to be the second one that you use, if that makes sense. The string order in the bracelet itself is different to what you see here. As I said, mine is going to be red, green, yellow. So there you go, those are the string lengths, how many strings you need, and the string order. Now, let's go into actually making this bracelet. This bracelet is actually pretty simple. There's only 4 rows that repeat over and over in this design. If this is the first tutorial that you're watching of mine, I always explain my bracelets in segment knotting, meaning that I never go row by row, except in this case I kind of am, except the rows are not going to be horizontal, they're going to be in the shape of a chevron, and I think that this makes sense for this pattern, though you can also make this pattern in slightly different ways. I just think that this way of explaining makes the most sense for a tutorial. I'll have the pattern up so you can follow along with the pattern with your eyes, but we're going to start with making a chevron with the red. But first, we need to reverse this red string, because the red string here, we've got it on the edge, but it's not the last string on the edge. The last string on the edge is this black. So we need to reverse it in a backward forward knot on the black. On this side, it would be forward backward knot on the black, and then we can go into that chevron shape. So the string on the left is going to go in forward knots all along these strings until it reaches the center, and the string on the right, once it does that forward backward knot, of course, is going to go all the way to the left in backward knots along these strings here in this specific order: black, yellow, black, green, black. Same here, black, yellow, black, green, black. So let's start with the left, backward forward knot, and then a row of forward knots along these strings, and then we're going to do the same thing on the right, except mirrored. We have to be kind of careful at the first row here, since it is the first row. It tends to be a little bit unstable. But we got that done. Let's do the same thing on the right here. Forward backward knot with the red as we discussed onto the black, and then backward knots onto these strings here. And then of course, in a true chevron manner, once we get to the center, we make a knot between the two strings in the center, and it doesn't matter which knot you do since they're both the same color, every knot is going to turn out the same. I just did a forward knot there. The second row of this pattern is nearly a chevron, except for one knot that is different. So we're gonna do a chevron with the black strings here, except not with the strings that are on the edge here, but with the strings that are second to the edge. We're gonna do a backward forward knot with one black string onto the other on the left, and a forward backward knot with this black string onto the other on the right. This is just to keep the edges straight. This pattern follows what is called the straight edge technique, on which I also have a separate tutorial, but all you really need to know here is that it just helps keep the edges straight when you do backward forward knots on the left and forward backward knots on the right. So we're going to do that just like we did in the previous row, and then we're going to go into a chevron just like we did with the previous row, with this black string going in forward knots along these and this black string going in backward knots along these, except we're not going to go all the way to the center. We are actually going to stop before we reach the red strings in the middle. So we're not going to make any knots onto the red strings, but we are going to make a chevron onto the rest of them on both sides. So let's do that. Backward forward knot, and then forward knots until the black string, forward backward knot, and then backward knots until the black string here. And of course, these colors should be yellow, black, green, and black. Same on the other side. So remember, second black string, not the one on the edges, second black string. Let's get into it. Alright, so now that we're in the center here, we've encountered the red strings. Instead of the black string doing a knot on the red string, we're going to do a knot with the red string onto the black string. So on the left, the red string is going to do a backward knot on the black string, and on the right, the red string is going to do a forward knot on the black string. Then both of these black strings are going to end up in the middle, and we're just going to do a knot between them too. There we go, half of the tutorial is actually already done. Let's continue. Now this row is a little bit different. We start by taking the color string that is closest to the edge, mine is yellow, and we're going to do a reverse knot onto the edge strings. So once again, backward forward on the left, forward backward on the right. And then we're going to do kind of the opposite to a chevron. Instead of the yellow string going into the center in forward knots on the left and in backward knots from the right, we are actually going to have each of these individual strings make a knot onto the yellow string. So instead of this yellow string going in forward knots here, all of these individual strings are going to make backward knots onto the yellow string. Same on the right, except forward knots onto the yellow string. And then once both of the yellow strings reach the center, we're going to make a knot between them. So it's kind of a chevron, but the opposite of one, in fact. So let's start with that. Once again, we need to do reverse knots on the edges here, and then on the left, each of these individual strings are going to make backward knots onto the yellow. On the right, each of these individual strings are going to make forward knots onto the yellow, and then a knot between them in the center. And the color order for the rest of the strings at this point should be black, green, black, red, black. Same thing on the right, but mirrored. Let's get into it. Alright, and now let's get into the very last row of the pattern before it repeats. The last row is also nearly a chevron except for one knot that is different. So we're once again starting with the string that is second to the edge, so this black string. We're going to start with a backward forward knot on the left and a forward backward knot on the right, just like we did with all the other rows. And then we're going to go into a chevron, except the first knot, the first string we encounter, is the green string here, the first color string. On the right, this green string is actually going to make a knot onto the black string, and then the black string is going to continue with the chevron as normal. So on the left, it would be a backward knot with the green string onto the black string once it does the backward forward knot on the other black string, of course. Then on the right, it would be a forward knot onto the black string, and then the black string will continue in a chevron with forward knots on the rest of these strings on the left and backward knots on the rest of these strings on the right, then meet in the center and make a knot between the 2 black strings. So there you go, just one knot that is different. The green string, instead of making a knot onto it, we're going to make a knot with it onto the black. But of course we start with the reverse knots on the edges first. Let's get into it. And there we go, that is it. There are only 4 rows that repeat in this pattern. So to create the pattern again, you just have to repeat those 4 exact same rows, except now we're working with the green string as the main color. So the colors would be different this time, but it's the same exact pattern. So feel free to rewind this tutorial back to the beginning. There's timestamps in the description for you to do that, and just keep repeating those 4 same rows until the bracelet reaches the length that you want. I'm gonna go and finish this off camera and I'll be right with you. And here we have the finished bracelet. I absolutely love how it looks, and I think that this is such a cool pattern to try out. I did triangle ends at the end and just twisted ties. Both of those video tutorials will be linked in the description for you, and I love it! Look how cute it turned out! And now that you've learned how to make a brand new bracelet, let's talk about the sponsor of this video, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of inspiring classes for creators like you and me. Use Skillshare to explore new skills, deepen your existing passions, and get lost in creativity. Skillshare has a wide variety of classes on various topics such as photography, design, animation, and even crafts like cross-stitch and embroidery, or freelance classes about building Etsy shops. There is truly something for everyone to discover. I am currently exploring a freelancer class by Emily Simcox called Bookkeeping for Freelancers: How to Handle Your Finances, as it is one aspect of being a YouTuber that I've always struggled with, and I have already learned so much about business banking and accounting. Skillshare is specifically curated for learning, meaning there are no ads and they're always launching new premium classes so you can stay focused and follow wherever your creativity takes you. Additionally, Skillshare's entire catalog of classes now offers subtitles in Spanish, French, Portuguese, and Dutch. The first 1,000 of my subscribers to click the link in the description will get 1 month free trial of Skillshare so you can start exploring your creativity today. And there you have it. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. I will try to answer as many as I can. And I want to give a quick shout out to my patrons and especially my top supporters whose names are on screen right now. Thank you so much for your support. If you also want to become a patron and support the videos that I make on this channel, there is a link in the description for you to sign up. But in any case, thank you so much for watching and I will see you in my next video. Bye!